Let's talk a little more about political hacks getting arrogant and puffed with their power. Early this year, Pauline Hanson, the One Nation leader, got monstered by the media for saying that a lot of people in the Housing Commission towers that were quarantined by the Victorian government were drug addicts or alcoholics. Now, on this show, later got her to admit that she should not have said a lot, but it is true that the government did have to organise methadone deliveries to those towers. So Hanson wanted to kind of apologise to the residents, or at least reach out to them, and so sent each a stubby holder with a picture of her and the words, "I've got the guts to say what you're thinking," and she sent that with a note saying no hard feelings. Now, for me, that was a bit tasteless, but those parcels never actually got through. Australia Post couldn't get to the towers and the deliveries had to be taken over to the Melbourne City Council, which is culturally very left-wing in a very authoritarian state, and the council refused to deliver them. Even reported Hanson to the police, can you believe that? And the Melbourne City Council still refused to do its duty and deliver the mail, even after Australia Post sent it a message warning the integrity of the mail is paramount. It's of paramount importance, and it is a fundamental principle that mail should be delivered as addressed without delay or interference. Would you like someone to be deciding which mail of yours got through or not? I was joined a short while ago by former federal Labor leader Mark Latham, who's now leader of One Nation in the New South Wales Parliament. Mark Latham, thank you so much for joining me. What do you make of the fact that Australia Post had to go to war to try to get Pauline Hanson's mail to the residents of these towers?
Well, I would have thought under federal law it's improper, if not illegal, to interfere with the delivery of the mail. This is a federal authority. The mail must get through. And what power or right did officials of the Melbourne City Council have to interfere in legitimate mail delivery to those tower blocks? And what harm does it cause to deliver grown adults their mail? This seems to be a bureaucratic or official interference in the work of a federal service that requires further investigation. I mean, I know in this COVID period, from Dan Andrews down in Victoria, there's government people there drunk with power and control and authority, but when it gets to the point of council officials blocking the mail, something seriously has gone wrong with basic notions of customer service and freedom in our country.
Well, the sheer arrogance of them deciding who may get their mail and who not. How do they know some of these people don't want a nice stubby holder? How do they know that all these people are against Pauline Hanson? It seems to me completely power has gone to the heads of a lot of people, particularly in Victoria, but also Queensland. I mean, can I just ask you about that? You see, in my opinion, two state Labor leaders acting extremely badly. Queensland's Premier PALASZCZUK with his border bans, ridiculous, causing so much grief and suffering. And, of course, in Victoria, Daniel Andrews acting like a mini dictator. I mean, with a curfew and unbelievable. What do you make of it all?
Well, Andrews keeps on saying he follows the official advice, but he doesn't take much advice. He got it from the emergency services person, not the chief health officer, not the police, to impose the curfew, which is a martial law restriction. You'd only do it in the most extreme of cases with universal advice coming to you, and obviously, you know, he tells lies in that regard. So he's drunk with power and out of control. And PALASZCZUK in Queensland, I think, is a different case where clearly she's doing this driven by opinion polling, a belief that closed borders are popular, it can help her win the Queensland election next month, and that's just rank opportunism at a huge human cost. Little kids who can't see their dying father, a daughter who can't go to her already dead father's funeral. These are huge, inhumane restrictions, particularly when measured against the fact that someone like Tom Hanks, who initially brought COVID to Australia from the United States, he went back and now he's comes in with no quarantine period. He's one of the elites who gets a PALASZCZUK exemption, and the AFL 400, the gang of 400, lounging by the pool at the Queensland resort, who apparently have a different set of rules applied to them. So if you rub shoulders with PALASZCZUK and there's a photo opportunity in it and you get some political advantage, she'll look after you, an insider elite job. But if you're an ordinary citizen grieving, or little kids worried about the imminent death of their father, Palaszczuk couldn't give two hoots about you. Now, I just don't know how she sleeps at night.
Well, I don't know how Labor puts up with this. I mean, you know, I've worked for Labor twice, and you actually led the Labor federally. I would have thought that Labor had a particular, I mean, accuse me of naivety if you wish, a particular view about overmighty governments and poor citizens and civil liberties and all that, and yet we see two premiers acting like they're, you know, right-wing despots. It's just unbelievable to me that Labor's letting them do this.
Yeah, well, you've raised a good point. I say this to some of the people in the New South Wales Parliament. There was a Labor left tradition of Jim Cairns and Lionel Murphy, where they thought the role of Labor politics was to protect the vulnerable against the excessive use of state power. Now people like Andrews and Palaszczuk, they are the exploiters of state power, using government control and authority to squash the interests of regular citizens in the most compassionate, what should be the most compassionate of circumstances. So it's a Labor Party that the likes of Cairns and Murphy, whatever faults they had, at least they had a clear philosophy that the party would go into bat for those who are being abused, discriminated against and squashed down by the excessive use of government power. That's totally lost now in the Labor Party, and to hear the likes of Chris Bowen making excuses for Palaszczuk is a disgrace. Government should never have this much power, and it never works for the regular citizens, the working class, the average Australians who need the help of parties of social justice to look after them.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just such a classic. How often we've seen this with real tyrannies too, although we're getting close to that here in Victoria. First you terrorise the citizenry, you know, with your dodgy claims and your dodgy modelling and your dodgy this and your wild exaggerations. You terrify them, and then you say, I'll save you with these appalling bans and restrictions and civil liberties. Why people aren't awake up to this just makes me despair. But Mark, bizarre scenes in your hometown, in New South Wales, in Sydney. The Deputy Premier, Nationals leader John Barilaro, has said his party is no longer going to support government legislation. They're all going to keep their ministries, which is nice, so they keep the white cars, but they're no longer going to support government legislation in Parliament because it's gone too far with legislation protecting koala habitats. Here's John Barilaro today.
The National Party will not attend joint party room. We will be abstaining from supporting any government legislation or bills, but we reserve our right to vote on and support or not support bills that are relevant to regional and rural New South Wales, and will do so until such time that our position and our amendments are considered.
Mark Latham, can you tell me what on earth is going on there?
Well, it's an unsustainable situation in that you can't have ministers sitting on the crossbench saying they won't support government legislation. Presumably their own legislation. If a National Party minister introduces a bill, they're saying they won't support the bill that they themselves second read in the Parliament. So Gladys Berejiklian clearly can't sustain that situation under the Westminster system. But Barilaro here has a genuine grievance. It's taken a long while to arrive at this point because the new KOALA land use laws came in last December, so it's taken 10 months to get to this point. But the reality is that in New South Wales we've got an extraordinary number of national parks and reserves. We've got 850, and you'd think in that environment there's plenty of protected space and trees in which koalas could flourish. But to then apply land use restrictions, supposedly for koala protection, to every other piece of land in New South Wales is ridiculous, because a koala site, you can see a koala up in the tree on private scrub today, and a couple of days from now it'll be 20 kilometres away, because koalas move quickly for mating and feeding purposes. So to hold land use, farmers and other broad acre land use in New South Wales hostage to that situation is ridiculous. So Barilaro's on the right side of the argument. It's taken the Nats a long while to get there, and the position today is completely unsustainable. But Gladys is often seen around the place as a weak leader. It is a government-riven by some hatreds and rivalries, the like of which you rarely see in politics. So how she sorts out this quagmire, who knows?
Well, maybe the Nationals will do it for her. They can't be led by a guy that's well, impulsive, and I don't know that they're all in favour of what's going on. And may I say, Mark, too, you know, why don't governments apply lateral thinking to problems like these? If they want to save koala habitat, one good thing, get a small koala feeding tree. Most of them are giants. I've looked around, there's only one dwarf variety being developed by Queensland University, not out for commercial use yet. But they should get that out there so lots of people in backyards and rural areas can have a tree without it being a monster and still have koalas. That's what we need, lateral thinking. Hand them out for free.
I've got some other lateral thinking. The Education Minister here is from the National Party. So if she goes to the crossbench, I'm volunteering to run the school system here. It'll only take me 3 weeks to sort out the problems.
Mate, I'm moving, that's it.
Failing results, gender fluidity, teaching. I'll step up for 3 weeks and solve all the problems, Gladys. Give me a crack.
As soon as I'm allowed out of Victoria, I'm going over to New South Wales. I'll vote for you, Mark. I can't wait to see that. Can't wait.
More than welcome, Andrew Bolt. More than welcome.
Mark Latham, thank you so much indeed for your time.
Pleasure.